You're taking notes at your desk. Or maybe you're going for a run. Or maybe you're in bed trying to sleep. And slowly, a tiny ball begins to form itself in the pit of your stomach. And with every note you take, with every step you run, with every breath you breathe, that tiny, dirty ball grows. It reaches itself up and around your entire stomach, growing so big that it fills every crevice of your insides, until soon it bursts through the fine ligaments of your body, crawling over your shoulders and under your toes. It almost seems to explode from your body and take on a form much like Maury, the hormone monster from Big Mouth. For those of you who aren't familiar with the animated show, Maury is this big, creepy, hairy hormone monster that incarnates all the puberty-driven thoughts of the teenage protagonists. So why am I talking to you about a hormone monster? Well, remember that tiny ball of exploding fire and evil revenge? That tiny ball is Maury's not-so-distant cousin. This shape that we see before our eyes after the explosion of that sphere, this shape is Marty, the stress monster. And in the next 15 minutes, we will be getting very close with our stress monsters. Today, with the help of our Martys, I will be exploring the idea of stress in academically challenging high schools. I want to understand how stress has become devalued in these types of environments and propose how we might restore it to its original importance. Unlike other medical terms, stress is hard to define because of its subjectivity and its lack of measurable quantity. If we are speaking in a medical context, stress is a mental or emotional factor that causes tension on the body and mind. Because of the negative connotations associated with the word tension, stress is often immediately linked to having negative outcomes. The positive side to stress is rarely looked upon in comparison. As a result, in rigorous academic environments, stress takes on a very narrow-minded meaning, often completely devoid of the serious nature of the subject and in complete disregard to the good side of stress. So, how do we avoid this limited understanding of stress? We look to the bad side of stress just as much as we look to the good. In order to understand how to balance the bad side of stress with the good, we first have to understand how the good stress has become lost in these types of environments. If I, as a student, were to ask a fellow student how they see or understand stress, they would often respond with something related to, stress is a negative factor in my life that is caused by an overload in school-related assignments. When I had teachers ask their students the same questions, the responses are always very similar. No matter who is asking them, students almost always associate stress with negative outcomes. Because of this, stress begins to lose its meaning. The more students use it to fight an assignment, whether it is a real reason or not, the less teachers see it as legitimate and the more they see it as an excuse. This leads to the devaluation and neutralizing of a word and condition that can carry serious consequences. To administrative leaders and to students alike, it becomes less and less clear whether we are speaking out based off real physical and mental concerns, or if we are speaking out under the premise of not wanting to do any work. This is the outlook inside the classroom. What if we were to look outside the classroom? Would the fight against stress be the same? The answer is no, quite the opposite. As opposed to fighting anything that could plant a seed of stress, outside the classroom, there was almost a competition for who has the biggest stress monster. This begs the question, how is it that these academic environments have become such stressfully competitive societies? Is it the sheer magnitude of high-achieving people? Is it outside sources of pressure? What is it in our academic construct that has created this culture in which behind the closed doors of the classroom we use stress as our defender, but as soon as we step out into the hallway with our peers, it becomes our ultimate weapon? As opposed to analyzing the evolution of education into these demanding environments, I am more interested in evaluating the evokers and consequences of stress and looking at how they might be challenged. Again, how can we balance the good and the bad stress? We have defined stress in a medical context. We have looked at how stress is viewed in these types of high schools. Now it is time to grasp what is this good and bad stress. Generally speaking, stress can also be understood as a mental or emotional consequence. Mental or emotional strain. Man, that stress is really getting to me here. A mental or emotional strain resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. Just like our first definition, this understanding immediately places stress in a negative light, pushing away all positive connotations. So let's begin by understanding the consequences of the negative side of stress, also known as acute stress. When the brain detects a stressful situation, the stress response system kicks into action, releasing a hormone that tells your body how to react. Basically, your stress monster Marty jumps out right next to you in full battle armor, ready to attack the enemy. This system is key to understanding how to react in tricky situations. However, long-term use of the system can hold deteriorating effects. Deterioration of mental effects include a decline in cognitive functions, decline in emotional processing, and even an increase in substance abuse. Marty ends up being with you 24/7, dragging you down, making it hard to think clear. As teenagers are our primary focus, let's take a closer look at one of these mental effects that holds a prominent place in high school communities: substance abuse. When schools approach the topic of alcohol and drug use, they often take an educational approach. Administrative leaders hire outside intelligence to come in and educate the students on the effect X drug has on the brain. All is well. But what if the approach schools had was not to teach their students that drugs are bad? All students in environments such as our own know that drugs are bad, yet we continue to use them. What if instead, schools took the approach of understanding what it is that is causing students to seek out these substances in the first place? Being able to understand, or even just answer concepts like these, often brings us back to the idea of stress as a contributor. Why are these intoxicating moments such key experiences of liberation? Because Marty isn't a part of them. Prolonged use of the stress response system can also lead to various physical effects, including migraines, weight loss, fatigue, and various other changes that I've witnessed for myself among my peers. This causes us to ask, how can we reject the presence of this evil side of Marty? And how do we find prolonged solutions to fixing stress that do not damage the integrity of our education? The answer to this lies in looking at the flip side of stress, looking to the good side of our Marty. The good stress is what psychologists refer to as eustress. In reality, stress is this burst of energy that sends signals to your brain and tells your body how to react. In small quantities, stress is great for helping you to face daily challenges. When you're about to start a race or take a test, your brain is able to perceive some kind of outside pressure. This perception triggers your body to flow with the stress hormone, increasing heart rate and blood pressure, along with other reactions. Suddenly, your stress monster Marty is right next to you, amping you up and cheering you on. When we feel eustress, it is what we feel when we are excited and when there is no threat or physical fear. When we feel this excited eustress, it is important to channel it rather than shrink from it as we do other stressors. With the harnessing of this kind of energy, we will become in control of the eustress. This control will allow us to propel further into the eustress-inducing activity, as well as differentiate it from acute stress. So, yes, there are two sides of stress: positive eustress and negative acute stress. Acute stress does not have detrimental effects if we find ways of quickly recovering from it. The fear in these high school societies is that there is no quick recovery. It is a constant rolling ball of stress that continues to accumulate as the curriculum continues to be taught. The obvious solution would be to change the style of curriculum in which students are educated. Although obvious, realizing the solution is challenging and slow. What isn't slow is perspective. We collectively, within each one of our academic communities and beyond, are capable of taking ownership of the devaluation of stress. We are capable of recognizing when Marty is giving us the extra boost we need versus when he's been dragging down our body for too long. The first step, in my eyes, to restoring stress to the true weight of the condition is exactly this: putting into perspective the moments when we are using stress as an excuse versus when we are being honest about how our curriculum is impacting us. Once we, as students, are capable of doing this, the administration will then be able to reevaluate their own educational system and understand the areas in which they are pushing their students too far, the areas in which acute stress becomes chronic stress. The next time you're about to take a test, ask someone out. Submit a big proposal at work. I want you to stop yourself. Stop yourself for 5 seconds. For 5 seconds, allow yourself to recognize that feeling that your body or your buddy Marty is creating. That twist in your stomach, the quickening of your heart, your palms become a little sweaty. All this anticipation for what is to come. Don't shrink from it. Thrive in it. Expand from it. Milk it for everything it is worth. But most importantly, remember it. Recognize that feelings, you have the power to be like, hey, this is eustress. Marty's doing a good job. Or, hey, hold on. Marty is really bringing me back into acute stress. Let's take a step back. I hope that with this, students and adults alike will be able to judge a situation well enough in order to determine whether they can put a positive spin on stress and channel it, or whether they need to take a step back before serious mental and physical consequences occur. Chronic stress in a teenager. Can you imagine that, Marty? Thank you.
Learning specialist Tracy Everett will convince you to consider valuing neurodiversity.